here we go. Sarah here. Welcome back to another episode of You're Fucking Welcome. Today, I want to talk to you about a certain little F word, and that is feedback. This is something that I have really adamantly spoken about for years now, because I think that especially as women, too often we are too open to feedback and opinions. And I feel as though there's this collective sense of we're rude or we're wrong or we're unkind to not be open to feedback. Like basically we're supposed to be open to criticisms and open to constructive criticism more specifically. And especially when it comes to what so many of us do, not to say that I disagree with the concept of, again, opening ourselves up to feedback, but I find that so often it does more harm than good. And it's a situation where I want to just remind you here that, it's one thing if you really truly desire feedback, but I wanted to kind of throw it out there to you that no, you don't have to be open to feedback if you don't want to. And especially if you find it's a situation where, again, it's creating a situation where you're not trusting yourself as much as we would ideally like for you to be trusting yourself. Two specific examples came up for me last week that kind of brought this topic to me. But the first one is that I was talking to a friend who is launching a podcast, and she was sharing with me what she wanted to say in the trailer. And so she sent it over to me like via Voxer. She recorded it, and she also sent it over to me via text to kind of like give feedback and all that kind of stuff. And she said to me, she goes, "I feel really good about it. Like it sounds exactly like me. I'm excited about it. Like everything across the board feels aligned about this, but totally tell me if you think I should change something." And I kind of wanted to like address with her, like and point out to her that, if you are sitting there saying that you feel great about it and you feel, again, like it sounds like you, so on and so forth, I want to just remind you here that like you don't have to open yourself up to like, oh, but here's how I might be wrong, or here's how somebody else could do this better, or I'm going to listen to you in what you tell me to change, right? Like you don't have to be open to that feedback if, again, you feel that good about it. And the second thing that happened, which is similar, and this happens all the time, but it's the most recent, example that I have, is I have a client who is successful in every sense of the word. She's been in business for years now and has crushed it in business, has made good money, and has a brand and, an audience that anybody would kill to have. And she was sharing with me that she was in the process of like launching a new version of her current program. And she asked her existing clients for feedback. Essentially, she sent out like a survey just to get people's opinions and all of that kind of stuff. And while it was 99% positive across the board in terms of what people came back and said, one person, of course, right, because we could get 99 positive compliments and then one teeny tiny criticism, that's the one that we actually tend to dwell on, all of us. But she got one piece of feedback that was, in my opinion, not only like overly critical, but also just like flat out wrong. Like it was just like flat out incorrect what I believe this person said. It was more of an opinion, and it was a harsh opinion that like didn't actually align with my client. I would give you more details if like I didn't want to protect my client's privacy here. But my point is that like I just think it was completely unnecessary feedback, and it was something that I don't know, it wasn't super valid in my mind. And I'm not just saying that because I love this client. Truly, I felt like it was nonsense, the thing that this person had to say about her program. And so my point ultimately is that I feel like as women, like I always say as women, and I really only work with women, but my point is I think that like it's true across the board that we as women, we have this tendency to, again, not want to feel rude. We want to do the nice girl thing, right? And we feel as though that like, oh, we're supposed to be open to constructive criticism. We're supposed to be open to feedback. And I'm sure, like, right, there's validity to that in some cases, in some aspects of our lives. But I just want to remind you over and over again that your certainty and your belief in what you do is the most important thing in terms of everything, but certainly in terms of the results that you get in your business. because the moment that we open ourselves up to somebody else might know more than me, somebody else might be more right than me, somebody's way is better than my way, especially when we're in a situation where it's working, that's the moment where we really kind of rock ourselves and we kind of like, it's weird. I don't know why I have this visualization, but I literally see certainty as like an island, and it's this island in the middle of nowhere, and we're on the island of certainty, and one little opinion or one person saying that like their way is better, it literally knocks us off and like we fall into the water. And like literally that is the visual that I get every single time I talk about this. And I hope it goes without saying that I'm not suggesting that all of us are always right? In the sense of like, if somebody were to, especially if it was multiple somebodies, if I was getting the feedback from a bunch of people that, hey, you really screwed this up, or you really underdelivered, or we didn't get what we were promised, of course, I'm like self-aware enough to take that feedback in and be like, okay, like maybe I screwed up here. Like I upset somebody, or I did something wrong here. I didn't deliver in this way. I'm going to make it right. Balanced out with, if one person says one thing about my business, my podcast, my program, whatever, and it comes back to like their personal preferences, the moment that I attempt to bend myself for each person's personal preferences, I am putting myself down a rabbit hole of trying to please everybody, and I will never please everybody. I think the most important moment that I really got this lesson was back in early 2017 when I started showing up in my Facebook group all the time. I was really giving myself permission to show up as myself, and I was cursing like on videos, which I know is like shocking to hear now, but there was a very like most of my business up until that point, I would have never cursed, right? Like I was really kind of like, not that I was a robot. I'd like to still believe that I was like the authentic version of myself, but I was definitely toned down, and I was definitely trying to be a more professional, buttoned up version of myself, if you will. And I remember when I started cursing a little bit more so, I would have people, is it really necessary to curse? Or, people would complain about it here and there. And it was just such a clear moment for me in the sense of like, because here's the thing with cursing. I respect if you don't like cursing. Like I was not raised in a household where like cursing just happened, right? Like if my dad now, I'm 36 years old, if my dad were to curse in front of me, he would like do it accidentally and he would apologize after. Like I just remember being at like Yankee games, for example, and like people would be cursing around us and my dad would get so upset, like people cursing in front of his daughters. And I'm using that example because like I wasn't raised in a household where like those words, like saying fuck, like that wasn't not a big deal, right? Like it was something that like was a sensitive thing. But my point is that I'm very clear on the fact that if I'm not using it at somebody, I'm not using it with the intention of like it's not like I'm not like using it to like slur somebody, or I'm not using it to be offensive towards somebody, or I'm not using an offensive word, or I'm not saying something that is super like, I don't know, just like super trashy and vile, anything like that, right? I'll throw it in when I'm passionate, right? I'll throw it in as kind of this colorful word to kind of like prove my point, if you will, and to share with you like how much I believe in saying something. And so my point is that if somebody has the personal preference of not liking cursing and not feeling comfortable with that language, I fully respect that. I really do. Like, and that's why I gave the example. Like I can understand not being comfortable with cursing. I respect that you don't like cursing. I don't respect you telling me that I can't curse. Because like, if we just use again the example of cursing, how in the world am I supposed to sit there and say, okay, I'm so sorry, Jessica. Like I'll make sure that I change, I don't say fuck anymore because of you. Where does it end? Right? Like that's where somebody's going to tell me that they don't like my shirt, or they don't like that I do long videos, whatever it is. Like it's just this rabbit hole that we can go down. And I would find myself then trying to please everybody, and that's impossible. And so again, it was just this clear example to me personally in that moment where I was like, I just have to be me. And I have to, as long as I'm not, again, being offensive or rude to anybody personally, if people don't like me and how I'm showing up, then they get to leave, they get to fall away. But like what's most important is that I am authentic to me, because that's the only thing I ever can do, because pleasing all these people would never be possible anyway. And so I don't see why I would even try. And so again, that was like the moment that it really kind of, I don't know, solidified for me, because before that, I never would have felt that way. I would have been rocked by anybody's, negative feedback or anything like that. But it was just, again, a moment of like, I can't please everybody anyway, so I'm not going to try. And so I'm saying all of that to remind you here that like every single person in your world is going to be triggered by different things. They're going to have different preferences. They're going to prefer that, the videos are longer, the videos are shorter, that, you answer client questions on Saturdays, so on and so forth. Like everybody wants what they want. And especially I find sometimes when you give people the option to give feedback, it sometimes brings out the worst in people. And I think, you could go on Yelp of any local restaurant to prove that to yourself, right? Like even I was noticing it with myself the other day. I'm like, I've bought so many things as I've moved into this new apartment, and, have I given positive feedback on any of the things that I've loved? Like, no, I haven't. I haven't left reviews. And I normally like to do things like that, especially like small businesses. But the negative experiences are the ones that we like wind up being pissed off about, or the ones that we wind up leaving reviews. Although I don't do that anyway. But my point is like most people will not leave a positive review, but they would be way more likely to actually voice their feedback when there's something negative there. And it always makes me laugh with restaurants, because, it's like people who can't cook who all of a sudden think that like they're going to criticize every little thing about, this restaurant, right? And so again, when you give people, I find, and I don't like to be so, I don't know, jaded towards humans, while at the same time, I think it is reality in terms of where we are with the internet. People will give negative opinions when you give them the opportunity to, or they'll look for reasons to like voice what they found negative, or again, like find reasons to nitpick essentially your programs, your offers, whatever it is. And so the bottom line is that it's not about them, it's about you. And I'll say this too, because this is coming up for me just in the dating stuff, right? Like, again, like I know I've shared with you guys, like I've been more heavily dating, if you will, like lately. And I think about things now where I feel so much more comfortable with it, in terms of like, not only like what's in my dating profile, but also like the interactions with men. And it makes me laugh that like Sarah a year ago would have been like, oh my God, I hope I don't like answer them too quickly, or I hope I don't say this because they might interpret it that way. And I'm like so worried about what they think. And it's just been such a beautiful moment for me over the past month or so. Like, I don't give a fuck what they think. I give a fuck about like me saying what's true to me. I care about expressing my feelings that I have, or my passions, or my desires, or what I'm looking for. Like, I don't care how somebody receives it. I care that I'm saying what is true, right? And so again, all of this to say, I want you to recognize that you pleasing yourself is far more important than pleasing everybody else in your world. And again, I hope it goes without saying, that's not to say that I don't want you to deliver on what you promised, or I don't want you to pay attention to when, especially you're getting multiple, people complaining or giving you feedback around the same thing. Be self-aware in that way and check in with yourself and look at, did I possibly mess this up, or is there a way that I can improve this? But again, balanced out with, if you like the podcast trailer, if you like the way that you're running this program, if you believe in the way that you're doing things, you being anchored and on that island of certainty is the most important thing possible. And you don't need to open yourself up to feedback, right? Like, that's not necessary. And I'm saying it that way, like, I want to make sure that I'm being clear here, because I literally hear from people, the way that they'll say it to me is like they feel as though they need, it's a necessity to be open for feedback. And it's like, no, you don't need to be open to feedback. You can make it very clear that like, I do things the way that I do them for a reason, and I believe in them, and I'm not open to hearing like again, the nitpicking or what people might think is wrong, or I'm certainly not going to send out a survey to hear everyone's opinions because I feel good about what I'm doing. And again, that's leading, right? I know that I do the things that I do with intention and purpose. I'm not just doing them to get a sale, or I'm not just doing them to go through the motions. I make choices in my business for a reason. And so I trust that. And I don't feel as though I need to open myself up this can of worms of 900 different opinions where, again, somebody might just be projecting their bad day onto me. Somebody might not get what I do exactly. Somebody might not be right for me, and my style is not their style, and they're giving me feedback on something that ultimately maybe was just a mismatch in the first place. There are a million different examples of this, but again, it comes back to you have to please you before you please other people. And the other important part of this is when you do that, that's when other people see you as a leader. When you are certain in your decisions and you are not so open to other people telling you how you could be improving, or you're not sitting there saying basically like, am I good enough? Is this good enough for you guys? Like when you're not asking them that, that's when they're going to, again, be that much more likely to see you as the leader. And that certainly does something for your leadership, your sales, all of it. And so again, all of it to say, I want you to remember here that you do not need to be open to feedback, and you trusting yourself versus the opinions of others is the most important thing that you can do. And I want you to really commit to less so being open to being, again, rocked off that island, being thrown into the water, because I've seen it over and over again create so much struggle and so much drama and chaos. Because again, we have this tendency to, focus on the negative feedback over the positive. And I've really seen it spiral for people and really create months and months of doubt and issues, right? And of course, I don't want that for you. So again, trust yourself and don't let anybody else rock you, especially when you trust ultimately what you're doing. You don't need to be open for that feedback. Okay, I'll talk to you next episode. Bye.